Governor's races, there only are 11, but 4 of them are fascinating. One of them is here, the other is in Indiana, and Mitch Daniels currently looks like in a lot better shape. Mitch Daniels and Matt Blunt came in at the same time, and they were supposed to be the reformer governors that everyone was looking to figure out how to do it and not get yourself in a lot of difficulty with your own party and with others. And didn't work out too well for either one of them, but Mitch has kind of withstood it and I think looks a little better. The other 2 are North Carolina and Washington kind of runs on its own track, but in North Carolina it is very much affected by the fact that they've got the Senate race with Elizabeth Dole that is a very close race, and that the presidential race has ended up being as competitive as it is. Now, the last thing I wanted to say was just to briefly talk about whether it is even possible to currently get a fix on the demographics of the state, and what we might be able to project is the likely outcome and how you kind of measure whether or not the polls seem accurate to you. I've made a statement that the 3 W's are completely off this election cycle, that we will not have as white an electorate as we had before, that we will not have as wed an electorate as we had before, and that we will not have as working an electorate as we had before. Last night on the plane, I took the 2004 national presidential exits and matched it up against the 2004 Missouri presidential exits, and there were some things there that just flew right off the page that I don't believe are going to be the demographic of your 2008 presidential. Is it possible for 89% of your electorate to be white? I say no. I just can't believe that it's going to be 89% white. In the Claire McCaskill race, it was 83% white, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that tick down a little. But any exit poll or any advance poll based upon a projection of how white the Missouri electorate or the national electorate is going to be, I think is already a flawed poll. How wed? Everybody is always talking about married people like somehow they're like this big majority. Well, last time they were 63% of the national electorate, and I didn't, you were exactly the same. I think with all of the people that we're adding to the electorate on the young end of the age scale, we are automatically adding people who are not wed. So I'm expecting those numbers to trend downward. I also don't think we're going to be as working as we were before. The national electorate was 60% working, and that just seems a little high. Missouri didn't ask that question, so I don't know whether you're 60% working, but I would just, again, assume that as we are getting both older and younger, and it's demographically kind of contradictory that we're getting both older and younger, but if you look at new voter registrations in the states that matter, the new voter registrations have been on the very young end of the age scale. So I'm saying the high probability is that we are adding people who are not full-time in the workforce, and we're also continuing to add people who are being retired. So if the polls are based upon white wed working, I think they're automatically going to be a little bit off. Now, I would expect that my Sarah Squared idea here would have been that the evangelical vote in Missouri is going to remain high, but it was like way higher in 2004 than the national electorate. Especially white born-agains. Nationally, that was 23% in '04. Here it was 35%. In the Claire McCaskill race, that went down a little bit. It went down to 31, and she did a little better among white born-agains than John Kerry did. But where she also made up a little bit was that the rural percentage of the vote in her race went down compared to the 2004 electorate. So the big question I would leave on the table here is whether or not the electorate of 2004 is replicatable in Missouri. I know it is not nationally. And whether or not the Claire McCaskill electorate of 2006 isn't more realistic about what '08 is going to look like here, with some tweaks, meaning that, again, when I look at white wed working, and white women, your white women were in greater abundance than nationally in '04, and they really liked Bush. Way off the charts, they liked Bush. Now, are they going to really like McCain, Sarah? Probably. But are they going to fall as a proportion of the overall electorate? And that is why I still say that if I were in the Obama campaign, I would keep my forces here, and I would haul people out of Indiana and bring them here. And even if I thought I would lose the presidential race, I wouldn't need it to get to the White House, to get to 269 or 270. I don't need Missouri, but that I might make enough difference that the governor is a Democrat and that I set up a 2010 for like Robin Carnahan or somebody else against Bond, so that if they're thinking longer term, I think there is still something going on here, because the nature of your 2004 electorate did not seem to be frozen in time and then be able to pick up and carry on. So if we have time, I'd love to chat with all the things you have on your mind, and I have plenty more notes, but there's never enough time. All the things that excite me when I come to a state, I just find so many fascinating things, and I think, gee, if I could just spend a couple of days here, it'd be so cool. So what do we all want to talk about? I hope you've seen your ads, because the Graves ad, the one that I call Opie Taylor, is really terrific.
There are a number of debates coming up between Barnes and Graves. How critical do you think those will be?
Well, the Barnes-Graves debate is hard for me to judge, because I don't know either one of their personal skills matched up against each other. I think if it become, here again, I'm using my sense of changing demographics, but if they rant at each other about what happened in the 70s or the 80s, and it becomes a social issue debate, and it becomes a debate on values, I think it hurts him rather than helps him, and that would be counter to what I'm sure the advice is that he's being given. I don't know how she comes across, because I've only seen her in commercials. I've never seen her, day by day, and he is not one of the, at least in the Washington parlance, one of the more out there members of Congress. So I also don't have a sense of how he handles himself in a spontaneous and unscripted situation, which at a certain point, no matter how prepped they are, the debate becomes, regardless of format, an unscripted and unrehearsed, spontaneous situation. And I don't know how well he does. But something always happens in a debate. Always. It's just a given. Something always happens. When are they scheduled?
Most are in October.
October? Have any of you been visited by the McCain campaigns, volunteers from the McCain campaign since the election? You have? Okay. Has anybody been visited by the Obama campaign, either before or after the convention? So I didn't see an Obama.
They're online.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Contact is visited to me means, did they come through your computer, your BlackBerry? They found you every day? The Obama people find you people. Okay, I wonder how they're getting your email addresses. You obviously have a friend who's involved. Probably your kids. I'm finding from people that it's their kids who are off doing things that they never thought their kids were doing before. So somebody has obviously found it. See, this amazes me, because I wouldn't think you're their first person to come to. I mean, excuse me, but since I knew you in the 80s. Well, this week, this is really interesting, because this week in Washington, I was at the National Association of Manufacturers conference, and I don't know if you know their executive vice president, Jay Timmons, but Jay was a longtime Republican staffer on the Hill, one of the smartest, most well-spoken political people you're ever going to find, and the NIM is really blessed to have him. He lives in Fairfax County in Virginia, which of course is this huge area of growth and democratic revival. He said everybody should know his voting patterns. His household should not be a secret. He has been visited in person with a door knock 15 times by the Obama people and 0 by the McCain people. So that's how good they are, that they are visiting people. But I imagine most of you who have said you've been, quote, visited by the Obama people, not 100% of you are going to run out and vote for him, so that they're, making an energetic appeal to people who may not end up voting for them. But I'm pretty much certain that anybody they registered to vote, I'm saying they get 90% of the people they registered to vote will vote, and that they're not going to, quote, go to the polls, they will vote early.